The Galactic Council had ruled the known universe for millennia, a collection of ancient species who saw themselves as the guardians of civilization. Their word was law, their decisions absolute, and for centuries no species had dared to challenge them until now. Humanity had always been an anomaly, a young race barely a few thousand years into space travel, yet expanding and advancing at an alarming rate. Unlike other species who sought to integrate peacefully, humans carved out their own place, refusing to bow to the so-called superior civilizations. Their independence was tolerated at first, but as humanity's influence grew, the Council saw them as a threat. It started with trade restrictions. The Council imposed severe limitations on human goods, claiming they were disrupting economic stability. When that failed to slow them, they restricted human access to advanced technology under the pretense of maintaining balance. Humanity adapted, innovated, and continued to rise. Then came the border conflicts. The Council decreed that humanity had overstepped its boundaries. Colonies established in neutral space were declared illegal. Human settlements were forcibly removed. Entire worlds abandoned under the threat of annihilation. But humans did not surrender. They fortified their remaining colonies, built weapons, reverse-engineered alien technology, and prepared for the inevitable. The final insult came when the Council demanded that Earth itself be placed under supervision. They claimed humans were too aggressive, too dangerous to be left unchecked. The demand was delivered in the form of an ultimatum. Humanity had one cycle to comply or face extermination. The response was immediate and unyielding. Earth rejected the ultimatum not with diplomacy but with a declaration of defiance. The United Human Nations transmitted a single message to the Galactic Council: we do not kneel. The Council dismissed the declaration as arrogance, believing the humans would break under pressure. They sent a fleet to the Sol system, a show of force meant to bring humanity to its knees. But the Council had made a critical mistake. They had underestimated just how far humanity was willing to go to protect its home. The first wave of the Galactic Council's fleet arrived in the Sol system, expecting immediate surrender. Their ships were massive, city-sized dreadnoughts bristling with advanced weaponry against which no species had ever stood a chance. They positioned themselves just beyond Earth's orbit, broadcasting a final warning. Humanity did not respond with diplomacy. Instead, the first attack came from Luna Orbital Command satellites hidden beneath the moon's surface. Unleashed precision strikes targeting the command ships before they could react. The initial volley destroyed 3 of the largest carriers in seconds, sending shockwaves through the enemy fleet. The Council's admirals were stunned. No species had ever dared to strike first against them. They ordered a full assault, thousands of fighters and bombardment drones descending upon Earth's defenses, but they found the planet was far from defenseless. Humanity had spent decades preparing hidden weapon systems activated from the surface. Space stations turned into gun platforms, planetary shields flickering into place to absorb the incoming fire. But the true horror for the Council fleet came from the humans themselves. They did not fight like any species the Council had ever encountered. Human pilots pushed their fighters beyond normal limits, executing impossible maneuvers, sacrificing themselves to take down superior enemy ships. The ground forces operated with terrifying efficiency, using guerrilla tactics even in space, ambushing boarding parties and turning every battle into a war of attrition. The Council fleets suffered losses at an unprecedented rate. Their tactical systems struggled to adapt to the chaos. Their commanders hesitated, unaccustomed to enemies who fought as if death meant nothing. Then the humans deployed their ultimate weapon. A ship unlike anything the Council had seen emerged from Mars' orbit, sleek, dark, built for war, but carrying something more than mere firepower. The AI-controlled dreadnought Achilles activated its experimental warp disruptors, trapping the enemy fleet inside the system before unleashing a bombardment of kinetic rods. Each strike turned Council capital ships into debris floating in the void. The Council fleet panicked, their formations shattered under the relentless human assault. With their command structure in disarray, their forces in full retreat, the Great Galactic Council suffered something they had never known before: defeat. The shattered remains of the Council's fleet limped back to the core world, spreading fear and disbelief throughout the Galactic Council. No species had ever survived a full-scale engagement with the Council, much less forced them into retreat. Humanity had done the impossible. The Council convened an emergency session, panic rippling through their ranks. Some demanded an immediate retaliation with overwhelming force, others hesitated, realizing that humanity was not like any species they had conquered before. A direct assault had failed, and their enemy was not weakened but emboldened. Meanwhile, humanity did not waste time celebrating their victory. They knew the Council would return stronger, more prepared, and so the United Human Nations initiated their most daring strategy yet. They would take the fight to the enemy. The Achilles led the first strike fleet deep into Council territory, not with the intent to conquer but to disrupt. With warp disruptors and AI-driven precision, human fleets struck at supply lines, communication hubs and manufacturing worlds. They avoided full engagements, hitting hard and disappearing before the Council could respond. They turned the war into something the Council had never experienced before: a war of chaos. Entire star systems fell into disarray. Council factions turned on each other, blaming failures on rival species. The once unified galactic order began to crack under the pressure. The Council had ruled through absolute control and fear, but now the fear was their own. Humanity did not seek peace, did not offer terms. They had been given an ultimatum: surrender or die, and they had chosen neither. Instead, they spread terror across the galaxy, reminding every species that the Council was not invincible, that the great empire could bleed. And then something even more shocking happened. The oppressed species of the galaxy began to rise. The Council's iron grip on the galaxy had been unchallenged for millennia, but now the cracks were turning into fractures. News of humanity's defiance spread like wildfire through the suppressed worlds. Those who had long suffered under the Council's rule, those who had been forced into servitude, those who had been told that rebellion was impossible, now saw proof that the Council could be defied. The first uprising came from the Zorati, a warrior race whose strength had been shackled by the Council's genetic inhibitors. When they heard of humanity's victory, they destroyed the Council stations on their homeworld using stolen human technology to break the control implants that had suppressed them for centuries. They declared their independence and pledged their allegiance to humanity's cause. Then came the Tavari, an ancient species whose technological advancements had been stolen and repurposed by the Council for their own use. With human assistance, they launched coordinated cyber attacks on the Council's data networks, disabling planetary defenses and exposing classified intelligence. Humanity had turned them from scholars into weapons. One by one, oppressed species rose up, rebellions erupting in systems once thought unshakable. The Council tried to contain the chaos, but they were now fighting a war on too many fronts. Humanity did not seek to rule these newly liberated worlds. They did not demand tribute or subjugation. Instead, they shared their technology, their tactics, their defiance. They fought alongside those who had once been too afraid to resist, and in doing so they turned the war from one of survival into one of revolution. The Council was no longer just fighting humanity. They were fighting the future itself. The Council's desperation grew as rebellion spread like wildfire throughout the galaxy. Entire sectors fell into chaos, once loyal worlds turning against their oppressors. The Council's fleet, stretched thin, struggled to contain the uprisings, but every time they crushed one rebellion, another would rise stronger than before. Humanity did not slow their assault. They struck deeper into the core worlds, disrupting supply chains, targeting shipyards, and forcing the Council to fight a war it had never prepared for. Guerrilla tactics, sabotage, and psychological warfare turned every engagement into a nightmare for the Council's forces. Then humanity took an even bolder step. Using stolen Council data and Tavari cyber warfare experts, they infiltrated the Council's highest security networks, uncovering secrets that had been buried for eons. What they found changed everything. The Council had not always ruled the galaxy through politics and diplomacy. Their rise to power had been built on the genocide of species that had once stood in their way, entire civilizations erased from history so that no one would ever know the truth. Humanity broadcasted this information to every known world, revealing the Council's darkest secrets. The galaxy reeled in horror. The Council's legitimacy shattered overnight. Worlds that had remained neutral now turned against them. Outrage spread faster than the Council could suppress it. Even their own military fractured, some refusing to fight for rulers who had built their empire on blood. The Council's control was slipping, the very foundation of their rule crumbling under the weight of their own sins. And then humanity made their final move. They would no longer fight from the shadows. They would march straight into the Council's stronghold and bring the war to the heart of the enemy. The final assault on the Council's stronghold was unlike any battle the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity and their newfound allies did not approach with caution or diplomacy. They arrived in full force, their war fleets emerging from warp with precision, every ship primed for the decisive strike. The Council had fortified their homeworld, believing that if they could hold this last bastion they could still regain control. Their defenses were formidable: planetary shields, automated dreadnoughts, and fleets of warships that outnumbered the human armada 3-1. But the Council had made the same mistake again. They underestimated humanity. The battle began with a shock assault, Achilles leading the charge, breaking through the outer defenses with weapons that had never been seen before. Railgun slugs moving at near light speeds shattered enemy formations. EMP warheads disabled planetary systems, turning their defenses against them. The Council's strategic hubs went dark before they could even respond. On the ground, elite human shock troops landed alongside Zorati warriors and Tavari saboteurs, fighting not just to win a battle but to end an empire forever. The Council's soldiers, many of whom had been forced into service by fear, hesitated, then surrendered. Entire battalions laid down their arms, unwilling to die for rulers who had deceived them for centuries. At the heart of the Council's citadel, the ruling members made their last desperate plea, offering peace negotiations, surrender, even power in exchange for survival. But humanity's response was as unyielding as it had been from the start. We do not kneel. The council chambers fell in a matter of hours. Their leaders either captured or executed. The once mighty rulers of the galaxy were no more. The war was over. The council destroyed their empire, nothing more than a relic of the past. But humanity knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy had been freed, but now it needed something new, something better, a future built not on oppression and fear but on strength and unity. Humanity had not just won a war. They had changed the course of history forever. In the aftermath of the Council's fall, the galaxy stood at a crossroads. The old order was gone, but the scars of its rule remained. Worlds that had been liberated now faced uncertainty. Rebellions turned into power struggles, and old rivalries threatened to tear the fragile alliance apart. But humanity had not fought just to tear down an empire. They had fought to build something greater. The first act of the new era was the formation of the United Galactic Coalition, a council not ruled by fear or oppression but by cooperation. Every species that had risen against the old council was given a seat, and for the first time in history no race was seen as lesser than another. Humanity did not claim dominance, they claimed responsibility. Rebuilding began. Alliances solidified, and technology once hoarded by the council was now shared freely. Science, medicine, and industry flourished in ways no one had ever thought possible. Yet humanity did not let their guard down. They knew there would always be those who sought power, who wished to rule instead of serve, and so they stood as the defenders of this new order, not conquerors but protectors, reminding the galaxy that freedom was not given, it was earned, and it must always be defended. Across the stars, the phrase that had once been humanity's declaration of defiance became something more. It became a promise, a warning, and a vow. We do not kneel.